What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Jenks Island Podcast, the only podcast where you can get your takes from a washed-up Division III cornerback. Joining me today on the island is good friend of the podcast, Ty McGee, recurring guest as well. Big Broncos fan. Ty, what are your thoughts on the Broncos this past week? You know, you guys had a good week. Bo Nix is staying hot, and this October was really good for him. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that was the most promising thing, right? Just how well Bo played. I'm a little concerned just about our receiving core right now. Like, you know, that game should have been a lot worse than it was. There's that deep ball to Marvin Mims at the end of the half that, you know, could have turned into points just based on, you know, the type of speed guy that he is. Cortland Sutton fumbling at the 2-yard line. You know, little Jordan Humphrey fumbling in a drive that was around the 50. So there's just a lot of mistakes by the receivers, which was concerning. But despite all of that, right, still dominated the football game. Bo Nix played lights out. Didn't matter, you know, who he was throwing to. He was just on all the reads, right? He was seeing the safeties, you know, the way that they were biting and making those, you know, throws to the deep digs. And, you know, there was one that they were breaking down, Cortland Sutton on like a 30-yard dig route. Safety bit on the underneath dig, and he just zipped it in there. And I mean, you know, a lot of people were concerned about his arm strength and, you know, what he could do when it comes to that, right? They weren't concerned about his decision making; it was his arm strength, and he's just proving everyone wrong in every aspect of the game. So, really promising. Defense obviously played really well. I think the 2 touchdowns are misleading because they were both off of the turnovers. So the kind of momentum and end of the game too, that last one, I mean, we were just hands off and not really, you know, full court pressing anymore. So promising, kind of needed that, kind of needed to show out and dominate ahead of this big game coming up this week that we'll talk about here soon.
Yeah, huge game. Quick thoughts as well. JC Horn was not a fan of it. What were your thoughts on them running up the score a little bit towards the end of the game?
I mean, I'm with everyone else, right? Don't suck, you know, be better, right? Like, and it's not like we ran it up, right? And I think I know exactly what he's talking about. He's talking about the double pass, Sutton to Mike Burton pass. At the end of the day, you're putting stuff on film in those types of games, right? That's no different than anything that you do in college football, no different than anything that any other team in the NFL does, right? They were getting shit pumped by other teams week in and week out, and he was not saying anything. So I think it just came to the point where he was starting to get pissed off. It's a weird moment too because Sean coached his dad, Joe Horn. So you think, you know, the young man would show the old guy some more respect. You know, you know, I think it was just a moment of frustration. JC's a good ball player on a bad team, so it's tough. But at the end of the day, you gotta like the name of the game is score points and score a ton of them, right? With a young rookie quarterback, I like taking shots, you know, making you know, crazy plays like that. I mean,
yeah, and it's a little bit goes along with Sean Payton, right? Because Sean Payton, we saw with the Saints when we were getting hot after those few seasons just sucking, and then we finally were a good team. Sean Payton started running the score up on teams, especially the Eagles. That was the big game where it was kind of noticeable. That's just something Sean likes to do. He likes, like, why kill your own momentum? You know, why play conservative? Just keep doing your thing, and if you keep scoring, you keep scoring. Yeah, like you said, don't suck. Anyways, pivoting from that, we got week 9 coming up. Crazy that this NFL season has been flying by. So we're going to be breaking down week 9, each game. And quickly, we'll go into our week 9 pick'em leaders. We got Unjuicy J is still on top, 81-40, but Hit of Ranch is catching up again, 79-43. My cousin's Micro Phoenix, nice, 78-45. And then Hammers at 76-47. Ty is at 75-45, and I'm still making my way up the leaderboard at 73-50 at this point in time. Slowly, I'll be up at the top soon. Don't worry about it. Anyways, getting right into the week 9 picks. Thursday night football tomorrow. This is a weird one to me because the Jets are taking on the Texans in New Jersey, and the Jets are favored tomorrow. And I can't seem to figure out why. It's a whole conspiracy right now in NFL media. Like, what's going on? The Vegas sports books, do they know something that we don't? I don't think they do. I don't know what they're doing, but I think the Texans, I'm not going to add too much. I think the Texans, yes, Stephon Diggs is hurt. yes, their offense didn't cruise by the Colts last week, but I don't think that means a whole lot. I think they can beat the Jets. The Jets offense is terrible right now. I think CJ Stroud and Joe Mixon alone could probably handle the Jets in this one. I'm gonna go to the Texans. What are your thoughts, Ty?
Yeah, I think it does obviously hurt the Texans with Steph going down with the ACL and Nico still being out with that hamstring injury.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm just as confused as you, and I think the rest of the world. JJ Watt reacting today to this as well. You got to be shitting me, is what he said when McAfee told him the spread. So I'm very shocked. I think at some point the Jets do kind of have to figure it out, right? They have too many weapons to be as bad as they are.
Yeah,
I just don't think it's against a team that's 6-2, has a really good defense. I know Texans struggled last week, but I think they'll have a bit more consistency with some of those younger receivers and Robert Woods getting some run. Mechie looked pretty good, so they'll be more of in a flow. I'm sure a lot of the offense last week was designed for Steph too, so that kind of hurts them. And Mixon's just been balling, so the Jets defense hasn't been what we thought it could be. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Texans here too.
Yeah, I just think the Jets' offensive scheme in general just needs to be revamped because the way they're running it right now is just not working. Next, we got the Cowboys taking on the Falcons in Atlanta. What are your thoughts on this one, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, this is a weird game. It's just like two teams that have kind of looked really hot at some points and then struggled at other points. Overall, I just think it comes down to can the Falcons continue to keep Kyle Pitts involved? We saw last week him, those two big touchdowns. That was a game changer for them, right? I know they have some weapons, but anytime you can get a dynamic weapon like that involved at the tight end position, that's a pretty big deal. On the flip side, Dallas is just continuing to struggle in the run game. I know CD had an insane game last week, and that's awesome, right? But when you play really good teams week in and week out, you cannot just rely on CD Lamb. When you play elite cornerbacks, AJ Terrell's on the other side. He's the elite cornerback. At some point in time, CD's not going to, I won't say he's going to get shut down, but he's not going to put up these, crazy stat lines. He might have a mediocre game. And when you can't rely on the run game, I know they were without Dowdle, but, Zeke didn't really do much and Dalvin Cook didn't get much run. So I just struggled to have any confidence in this Dallas team, no matter, what they've shown us this far. And they haven't really shown us much. Defensively, they struggle. I think Kirk Cousins is playing pretty well. He's had 500-yard games. He's had, 4 touchdown games. So I think at least the Falcons offense is humming. And, they're even getting Tyler Algier some run. So him and Bijan have been a nice 1-2 punch. I just think their offense is going to be too much for Dallas's, I'm going to say a piss poor defense. And I don't think Dallas on the other side will be able to do enough against a pretty good defense in Atlanta. So I'm going to go with the Falcons here.
Yeah, you don't really need much more than an average run offense, and you can basically run the ball down the Cowboys' front seven's throats. They cannot stop the run for the lives of them. They had the 49ers, technically fourth string running back going into the season, now probably moving up those rankings because he did have a good game. Isaac Rendo, who going into the year was very underappreciated. He had a very high RAS score, and that's right up the 49ers. That's everything the 49ers want. I think he had a good game. I think Bijan and Algier are going to have good games. So I'm going to go with the Falcons in this one as well. Next, we got your Broncos taking on the Ravens in probably their biggest game of the year by far. And the Ravens looking to come back after a terrible defeat to the Browns. What are your thoughts on this one, Ty? Break it down for us.
Yeah, this is a big one, right? These next 3 games, if we can pull out one of them, I think that really starts the push to the playoffs, right? Because if you look at the latter half of the season, there's at least 4 or 5 wins in there that I think are definitely possible. So you get this one, right? That's 11 wins. I think an 11-win football team can make the playoffs, at least as a wild card. So I think this is huge, obviously, in a lot of aspects. I think coming into this one, right, I know that Baltimore offensively on paper has a lot of weapons, but it comes down to what if they put out there, right? I think last week they really struggled against Cleveland. I know, they added Deontay Johnson, but the receiving core is just not. I don't even think Deontay Johnson is a big add. I saw a reel last night about just all of his drops that he had this year in Carolina, right? So he's not much different than Bateman getting smacked in the face by a football. I think that the big story will be Denver's defense versus this offense because, Derrick Henry, he's a baller, right? Lamar Jackson's a baller. So those two are ballers, right? Even if the receiving course is not, up to par. But historically, we have not really struggled against either of these guys. In 22, Denver only lost 10-9 with a terrible game by Russell Wilson. I think our defense is a lot better than that 22 team was. Derrick Henry hasn't been a guy that's really gashed us in the past. So I coming in, I have a lot of confidence in Denver's defense to shut them down. And then on the flip side, I know probably a lot of people are going to think, what can Bo Nix? Can he prove it against a quality defense? But I don't really think Baltimore's defense is as good as people give them credit for, right? I think against receivers, they're ranked towards the bottom in touchdowns allowed to wide receivers. We saw what Cortland Sutton could do last week against, a secondary that's not that great. And J.C. Horn was covering him a lot of the game, and he still had a really good game. So I think Denver's offense, the run game's concerning. We just haven't been able to get it going except for against New Orleans. But I think Bo can play well enough to put some points on the board while the defense kind of shuts things down on the other side. I don't think that they're going to be able to entirely shut down the 1-2 punch of Lamar and Derek, but I think that they'll be able to, kind of corral it enough that Denver, if they score 17, 20 points, that they can win a close ball game like that. It really does come down to, corralling those two and then just playing efficiently on offense, right? No turnovers. That's something Bo's been really good at since early on in the season, and no sacks. That's what's really promising to me, right? If he can just get us in positions to score, that's when we've had a lot of success. We kind of fell behind in that Chargers game, and that kind of screwed us with the interception. But if we could just play turnover-free football, no fumbles from the receivers, and just kind of, continue the role that's been happening week after week of Bo just continuing to grow, I think that'll be huge. I know this is in Baltimore. I'll actually be at the game, which is exciting. But yeah, I just have a lot of confidence in what Bo's been able to put together. He's showing some elite traits. He's not elite yet, right? But the traits are there. And I just think, Denver's defense is dominant. And we saw what happens when Baltimore runs into – I'm not willing to say the Browns are a dominant defense anymore because Myles Garrett didn't really do anything. But last week they struggled, right? The passing game from Jameis Winston kind of dominated them. And then the defense for the Browns played well enough to add on to the Ravens' mistakes to win that game. And, Denver's defense is better. And I'm not willing to say that our receivers are maybe better than the Browns. They haven't shown anything to me yet this far in the season. But I think Bo Nix is a better quarterback than Jameis Winston. So that gives me a lot of confidence. So obviously I'm going with Denver here, but
yeah, no, I support you supporting your team because you have every reason to at this point in time in this season. Like, you guys have played well. You've played good defense and efficient offense, like you said. Like, that's kind of what Bo Nix has been. He's just been doing everything he needs to. And as soon as he takes that next step, then you guys will become scary. But what I will say is I think for the key for the Broncos to win this game is to get the first points on the board. Because when the Ravens play from behind, it's a completely different offense. The Ravens are on top, then they just start running the ball with Derrick Henry, tying out the defense and just trying to run down your throats. But if you guys score first, that's what we kind of saw when the Ravens got behind last week. They just started kind of throwing the ball, getting it away from Derrick Henry, and that's where they start falling behind in the game a little bit. So if you guys can do that, you guys can win this game. Do I see it happening? Not this week. And you guys could prove me wrong. I could 100% be proven wrong here, but I'm going to go the Ravens here at home, adding Deontay Johnson. I think they got momentum from that deal. I think they'll be able to throw the ball and run the ball at a balanced rate enough to beat the Broncos here in this one. It could be a close game, though, with the Broncos defense, yes, being very, very good. Next, we got the Dolphins taking on the Bills. The Dolphins getting back to last week and still losing and just falling to an all-time low of a team where you were like, we get Tua back, we're a good team. Like, that's kind of everything they were hoping for. And then they lose to the Cardinals. And it's just, Ty and I have been talking about the Cardinals being back and forth all year long, so I'm not going to talk about them yet. But the Dolphins, you have to go and win that game when Tua coming back, with the momentum coming with him there. And they just underperformed. The offense still was all right. It wasn't a bad performance per se. Their defense didn't step up, and the Cardinals ended up winning. On the other side, you got the Bills, who just absolutely destroyed the Seahawks in Seattle. Just took over the home stadium, took over the game, Their offense destroyed the Seahawks defense that we've been talking about being all right this year with Mike McDonald. So I think the Bills can do the same thing the Dolphins this time. And they've usually contained Tyreek Hill. He averages like, I want to say less than, it was like 0.3 touchdowns a game against the Bills in all of his games he's played against them for the Dolphins. So I think the Bills will contain this offense and win this game. What are your thoughts, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this story before, right? Just look back at week 2. I know Tua missed pretty much the second half of that game, but at that point in time, that ball game was over, right?
Yeah.
Like they just couldn't do anything, and not being able to do anything against Arizona, while Arizona seems to be at least an all right team, a pretty good team. This offense is supposed to be lights out, right? This is supposed to be the strength of their team, and when they're just playing mediocre and they don't have a defense that's very good, I think losing Vic Fangio hurts them because schematically, I don't think they've got it going on, and they've lost some guys to injury. I just really struggle to trust the Miami Dolphins. Now, if they can turn it on, right, and they start going on offense, it's a whole different ball game, right? Like if they can get Tyreek making big plays and Jalen Waddle, and the run game going, they lack consistency, right? Like they lack consistency in the run game. They lack consistency in the passing game, and their defense I just don't think is very good. And that's hard when you're coming in and playing a team like Buffalo, who is just kind of running over a lot of teams, right? Running over Seattle. Seattle at one point in time was looking like one of the better teams in the NFC, right? And now to beat them like that, I mean, in Seattle, right, and one of the toughest places to play in the NFL. I really think that says something. Amari Cooper has been huge for this team, not only just because of the production that he's had, but the what he's allowed Keon Coleman to become. Keon Coleman, I mean, mossing Tariq Woolen, making big plays. He's really stepped up. The attention is off of him. Like you talked about last week, right? It's hard for a rookie to come in and be a one. So taking the attention off him has been big. We've seen this before, so I'm going to go with it again. I'm going to go with Buffalo just because I just can't trust Miami right now.
Yeah, you never know who you're going to get every single week with the Dolphins right now. Next, we got my Saints taking on the Carolina Panthers. And the Carolina Panthers are the worst team in the league. They're downgrading their team by trading away Deontay Johnson for a bag of chips. They're starting Bryce Young this week over Andy Dalton. He's still recovering. And the Saints, I mean, we were down. We had no starting quarterback for the last however many games. Then you also had other injuries come into play. And last week against the Chargers, I came in saying, we're getting back Taysom Hill. We're getting back Olave for this week. We're getting back Cesar Ruiz, Lucas Patrick. Like, I expect a little bit better. And then you went and saw Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener just lay goose eggs. It just was not pretty on offense. Both quarterbacks struggled to get the ball out in time and to the right places. They were throwing the ball way too hard and high up over the middle of the field, which is never a good idea. It just wasn't a pretty performance. The offense did have what I want to say, they had bigger plays. They were driving down the field pretty well and then get into like the 40-yard line and they get stopped for whatever reason and could not get the ball moving from there. But with Derek Carr in this offense, I think they're going to have enough to beat the Panthers at least this week. We'll see if they can return to that week 1 and 2 self. I don't see that happening, but it's definitely going to be an improvement over the past week's products on the field. So I'm going to go with the Saints beating the Panthers here. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, with Derek Carr coming back, right, this is a bit of a different game. If we had Rattler or Haener, it's a bit tougher, with what they put on tape so far. But Carolina's bad, right? Like you've said, like they're bad. Besides their one win, they've just been gotten destroyed by a lot of teams. So it's tough, right? I mean, I know. I think Adam Thielen might be back this week, and Leggett has kind of showed something. And Bryce didn't look terrible last week against a good defense.
No.
But it's just they're not ready. They're not ready at this point in time, right? And defensively, they're not good, and they've been really banged up this season too. So that doesn't help them. I just think at the end of the day, right, the Saints have better players on offense with Olave, Kamara, guys like that can really make plays. And when you bring back your starting quarterback, who is at least serviceable in comparison to the rest of the product that they've been putting out there, that's huge. So I'm going to go with the Saints here. I mean, I don't have much else to say on it. It's just Carolina's bad.
Yeah, there's not too much you got to say when Carolina's playing the way they are. Next, we got the Raiders taking on the Bengals. The Raiders offense just looks really extremely static right now. There's no There's no dynamics to it. It's just Gardner Minshew trying to force feed Brock Bowers, and then a few runs with Alexander Madison, and maybe a few throws to Trey Tucker mixed in. Like, it's not a dynamic offense. There's not much going for them. And then the Bengals got whooped by the Eagles, which I didn't really expect. I expected them to at least put on in a competitive game. Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase, first touchdown of the game. I was like, okay, they might pull this off, and they just ran the ball all over by the Eagles. Jalen Hurts was doing tush pushes left and right, which pissed everyone off in the betting and fantasy communities for Saquon. And I mean, the Bengals just did not look good, but against the Raiders here in this one at home, they're 0-4 at home. So you never know, like, if that's like something that's going to continue into this game, but they should be able to win this one. I'm going to pick the Bengals against the Raiders. What are your thoughts, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, right, the Raiders, it's just their offense is stagnant and confusing, right? Like Brock Bowers has looked really good so far this season. But other than him, right, it's maybe a little bit of Madison, maybe a little bit of Jacoby Myers, now that he's back healthy. And I mean, they played a close game with the Chiefs last week, but I think that says a lot more about the Chiefs than it does the Raiders, right? I don't think Gardner Minshew, he's had a lot of turnover problems this year. He just hasn't been what they thought he could be coming in after a decent season last year with Indy. They just have struggled, right? And on defense, they don't have anything besides Max Crosby. Like they just, they're not a good football team. And I think the Bengals are coming in, motivated. Joe Burrow come out and he says, we got to win 7 or 9, right? Like that's the easiest path to the playoffs for us. And I just think, that game last week wasn't as bad as the scoreboard showed, right? It got bad late. They were in it for a bit there. That pick to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the sideline that kind of got tipped. That was kind of when the game flipped. Philly's a pretty good ball club, so I think it's tough. But at the end of the day, the Bengals offense is really, really good, and I don't think the Raiders are going to be able to keep up with that or stop it on defense. So I'm going to go with the Bengals.
Yeah, no, I got to agree with you there on all points. Next, we got the Chargers taking on the Browns. Jameis Winston. I mean, I said it last week, Ty. I know I sounded a little bit crazy, but I was like, Jameis Winston coming into this Browns team, it brings the momentum. The team loves the guy. They play harder for him, it seems, and they were ready to eat some W's on the field. But anyways, the Chargers, they came in with a great game plan to beat the Saints. Their offense, like the Saints stopped the Chargers run, which is like the last thing I expected them to do. Was not like, I didn't expect them to shut down J.K. Dobbins for the most part. He still scored in the red zone, but I wasn't expecting too much once they got down there. But to stop them for the most part throughout the game surprised me. And I think the Browns are going to be able to do the same because the Browns defense is better than the Saints defense throughout this season so far. So they should be able to limit the Chargers a little bit more. If the Chargers have their same weapons out there with just Ladd McConkey, without Quentin Johnston, I think that the Browns are going to be able to win this one. The Chargers, if they are fully healthy, maybe they come out and beat the Browns. But the Browns at home, Jameis Winston beating the Ravens last week, they have too much momentum. I'm going to take the Browns beating the Chargers here. What are your thoughts?
Interesting. Yeah, because the Chargers defense is just really, really good, right? I mean, if you look at the top 5 defenses in the league right now, 3 of them are in the AFC West with the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos. So, they're playing really well on defense. The offense is just struggling, right? As I said last week, they don't have a threat outside. Ladd McConkey looked pretty good last week, but he hasn't shown us any consistency. And he's a rookie, right? You can't, like we said with Keon Coleman and some of these other guys, you can't expect, guys who aren't the top 2 receivers to come in and really dominate and be your number 1 guy. I think this is tough because the Chargers have just not been able to get Dobbins rolling the past couple of weeks. Like, he looked hot those first couple of weeks. And then they kind of hit that bye week, and he's like 50 yards a game, and he hasn't been the same. And I think that's the key factor for them, right? If they can get Dobbins going, this offense is entirely different, right? You have to focus more on that run game, and things open up a little bit more in the passing game for them. On the flip side, right, Jameis looked lights out last week, right? He played really well. Their passing game was going on all cylinders, right? Like, they look really good. I think if they can continue to get Nick Chubb involved, right, the run game might be a huge story here. If they can get Nick Chubb involved, that'll be big for them as well, right? Because they kind of become that dual threat offense with a pretty good defense. I expect this to be really low scoring. because the Chargers defense is really good, but I just don't trust their offense right now. And I think the Browns are good enough to slow them down. I think the Chargers defense will force Jameis into some mistakes as well. Historically, he has been a guy who's thrown some picks that 30-30 season and stuff like that. So I'm going to go with the Chargers here to switch it up a little bit. I just trust the defense for the Chargers a little bit more to keep the Browns to low scoring game. And I think the Chargers can score 20 points and win a game like this, and especially if they can get Dobbins rolling.
Yeah, they just have to capitalize on Jameis's mistakes. You saw last week the Ravens couldn't do it. They dropped picks. And if the Chargers can do it, they definitely can win. Next, we got the Commanders taking on the Giants. Obviously, the Commanders winning on an absolutely insane Hail Mary. No one expected it, but it was at the same time, there were some there was a stadia, or there was a what's it called, an interview going on in the stadium where the guy was like, yeah, I feel like we won this game. It's just we lost like a couple plays, whatever, but I'm not going to go down like feeling down about the team. And then they win the Hail Mary while he's talking. He's like, I told you we won. I told you. It's just like the fans weren't down about them being losing to the Bears. Like they felt like they still had a solid game, and they ended up winning it. And that's how you become a good playoff team, is if you can steal games like that, on even if it's pure luck, pure chance. We've seen it with Aaron Rodgers in the past. Anyways, on the other side of the ball, you got the Giants, who they have no offense. Daniel Jones hasn't thrown a touchdown pass at home in however many weeks, months, almost a year, over a year now, whatever. And the Giants, yes, you have Malik Neighbors, and Tyrone Tracy is very, very good. I think he's not on like a lot of people's radars yet. He's not on the radars of the national media and ESPN and stuff like that, because he's on the Giants and they're not doing anything. But if they were a winning team, he'd be talked about like Jordan Mason was when he came in for the 49ers, because he's been doing a lot of impressive things. And I think the Commanders are going to be able to slow him down. They have a solid defense. They just need to get Brian Robinson going a little bit more in this game. Get Jaden Daniels. I mean, he's still getting the ball to Terry McLaurin every single game, week in, week out. I think they'll be able to do it again this week, with the Giants secondary not doing what it should. Banks seemingly got benched last week in the middle of the game. Not what you want from a corner that you just drafted. I believe he was the first round pick just a year ago. So the Giants are reeling. The Commanders are not. So I'm going to take the Commanders.
Yeah, I really don't think the Giants offense is as bad as you kind of made it out to be, right? They have Tracy, Wandale, Neighbors. Like, they have some good guys. I think what's really holding them back is the offensive line. I think Daniel Jones holds them back a little bit, right? But I didn't think he played terribly last week, right? Like, what changed? They had opportunities. What changed the game was Jermaine Illuminator, or whatever his name is, not being able to block TJ Watt, and coaching wise, not giving him any help, right? No chips from the back, no tight end. They were blocking tight end tackle on the same side as Highsmith, which, no disrespect to Highsmith, he's a really good football player too, right? Made some disruptive plays. But at the end of the day, TJ Watt is defensive player of the year type of player. So, you got to give the right tackle, who has been a journeyman right tackle, some help there. So overall, I think skill position wise that they have some talent there, but they need some help on the offensive line. On the flip side, right, their defense is terrible, really, really bad. Russell Wilson, I mean, he looked really good, right? He connected on some deep balls, but some of those deep balls, man, like, these corners were just biting and getting toasted too, right? Like, I remember Drew Phillips stepped down and Calvin Austin just cooked him on a corner route. And I think Washington's offense is better than, the Steelers from what we've seen so far. I don't think the Steelers have a bad offense. The Commanders have just proven to be, have the ability to be a lights out offense. And I think that's going to be the big factor in this game, along with Tyrone Tracy possibly missing the game with a concussion. Because Singletary just hasn't been able to keep it rolling since that early success he had. So I just think Washington's offense is too good, and they're going to put up a lot of points, and the Giants just won't be able to get the run game going with Singletary, and I don't know if they'll be able to protect.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if like Sexy Dexy can get going for the Giants, maybe they can get a little bit of momentum on the defensive side of the ball, but he's like their only anchor right now on the defensive side. Next, we got the Patriots taking on the Titans in a game that no one is going to want to watch this week. I mean, I've said that for a few games this season, but this one's it's really bad. I mean, the Titans have struggled to have a positive EPA with either quarterback that they put out on the field, and the Patriots just beat the Jets. They beat Aaron Rodgers. Their defense seemed to take offense to a lot of people saying they were soft. They put out a decent product, but the Jets, their offense was driving down the field and scoring. It's just the offense for the Patriots went down in the field and scored when they needed to without Drake May. So if Drake May is back for this game, actually either way, I'm gonna pick the Patriots for this one. I think the Titans offense is too far gone. The Titans defense is not a bad defense by any means. It's not a great defense at this point in time, but it's still solid. They've had a great scheme over there. I think the offense kind of puts them on the field for too long during the game, and then you just start getting tired by the end of it, and it's tougher to stop NFL teams when you're completely tired. You're on the field the whole game, things like that. But for that reason, I'm going to go the Patriots here. I just think they're going to be able to beat this team, even if it's by 2-3 points in a close game. I'm going to pick Patriots. What are your thoughts, Ty?
Yeah, tough saying the Titans defense isn't that bad after they just got absolutely pumped by the Lions this past week.
The Lions are pumping everyone, so I'm not really too worried about it. But yes, you are correct.
Tough one. Regardless, right? Both of these teams, this is a stinker, like you said, right? Without Drake May, I think with Drake May, this would be far and away the Patriots. I think we've seen a lot from Drake May, and he's shown a lot of promise.
Yeah.
But with Brissett in, it's a little bit dicier. I just don't think Tennessee has anything going on, right? They trade away Hopkins, so and then Calvin Ridley, he looked really good, and then he got hurt, right? So, and I don't think he's going to be playing this week. Even though the Patriots traded away Josh Uche, I still think they have a good enough defense that they can force Rudolph or Levis, wherever ends up playing this game, to make some mistakes. And I just think the Patriots, they'll rely on Ramondre Stevenson to kind of run the ball well, and just Jacoby Brissett to be the veteran journeyman backup quarterback that he is. It's just, play quality football. Don't make any crazy plays, but also don't make any crazy negative plays. So I'm going to go with the Pats here, Jim.
Yeah, no, I do like that you bring up the Lions. Absolutely. I mean, Jared Goff, 28 passing yards, and they still put up 40 points. It was ridiculous. I just think the Titans defense is like worn down. I don't think that they're a bad defense by anything. I think they're like a solid defense, but it's just not going to matter when your offense can't put up any points at all, and you're just going out there every single 5 seconds. Next, we got the Bears taking on the Cardinals. This is an interesting game because the Cardinals, like we've both discussed in the last few weeks, they've been up and down. We were like, Ty originally wanted to put him high up in his power rankings. Like, I think it was like week 3 or 4 or whatever. And then they lost the next week pretty badly. And then we were all like, okay, yeah, the Cardinals are who we thought they were. Do they suck? And they come out and beat a couple teams. And then they beat the 49ers, and then they beat the Dolphins last week with Tua back, and they start to have a little momentum, and they're sitting at the top of their division at 4-4. That whole division is basically 4-4, except for the bye week messing that up. But that division, you never know what's going to happen. The Bears, I think they're going to be pissed off. Caleb Williams is going to be pissed. He's going to be throwing his heart out with every single throw next week. He's going to be trying to get this win for the Bears so that they don't reel. Like, if you lose this game to the Cardinals, all your momentum of being 5-2 going in the Commanders game is lost. Like, you're losing a lot of momentum if you lose this game, because it was a Hail Mary. Like, I just think that game they should have won. Stevenson, 29, he basically blew the game for them by taunting fans and then tipping the ball to Noah Brown. So it's like, it was completely unlucky, but at the same time, it was their fault. So I'm not going to say it was just pure chance, but the Bears should be able to win this one. I think their offense and defense are going to be playing complementary football in this one, and they're going to be able to slow down Marvin Harrison enough to beat Kyler Murray. I think Jalen Johnson's been having a good season, and I think he's going to be able to at least contain Marvin Harrison Jr. in this one. What are your thoughts, Ty?
Yeah, I think it's tough, right? Because the Bears, even though they lost on a Hail Mary, stole that game pretty late too, right? They were down for a lot of that game. So it's not like they had a lead, and then kind of just lost on a fluke play there at the end. They just haven't shown me anything consistently on offense, right? One week they look lights out, and Caleb Williams is throwing the ball over the field, and DeAndre Swift is this dominant back. And then last week, low scoring game. Caleb barely has over 100 yards, and it's just they don't look as good on offense. I think the big thing for Arizona has been Kyler's just been able to start running more. He's really showcased his athletic ability since they kind of had that downward peak. On this upward peak, right? He's been running a lot more, making plays with his legs. And I mean, even last week, right? I know this Bears defense is good, but Marv made a lot of good plays over the middle, on some crossing routes, just kind of getting open against Jalen Ramsey, right? Who's one of the better corners in this league still to this day. So I have a lot of confidence in Kyler and this Cardinals team, and I might be blind confidence. I've been rooting for them since the beginning, right? They're a hot team right now, right? They're winning a lot of games, and the Bears, that was a heartbreaker, right? That was a heartbreaker, and they haven't been a consistently good football team, right? And they beat a lot of bad football teams if you look at their record too. So, which a win's a win, right? And I'll say that all the time, but it's just they haven't really proven to me that they can hang in a football game with a really good team. So I'm going to go with Arizona because I just believe that Kyler can evade some of that pressure that good defense is gonna bring. And I think Marv will still make some plays. I really trust him. I think Michael Wilson's kind of coming along too. Trey McBride had a big game, so I'm gonna go with the Cardinals.
I like it. I think this game truly is a coin flip. I think either team, like we've said every week, you don't know what team you're gonna get showing up. So it's gonna be an interesting game to watch. Next, you got the Jaguars taking on the Eagles, and the Jaguars are another team where it's like they had a close game with the Packers, but Malik Willis was in for a portion of the game. Does that mean that the Jaguars aren't as good? I don't know. They made it a close game so that the Packers had to win on a game-winning field goal, and a lot of people didn't expect that. My friends and I, we create a parlay every week, and it was supposed to be the Packers -2.5, and I accidentally put in the Jaguars -2.5, completely on accident. Like I was doing the alternate thing and I clicked the wrong button. And then when that happened, I was like, holy shit, I didn't mean to do that. And then I started to believe because like they made it a game. I was like, we can do this, Jaguars. We can do this. And obviously they didn't. But the Jaguars did put up a fight. And I just think their offense is starting to do a little bit more. Obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. is a stud. He's a stud. Tank Bigsby is taking that number one running back spot over ETN. But the Eagles, they're clicking on all sides right now. AJ Brown truly is becoming just a guy you can throw the ball to for Jalen Hurts, and he'll just come down with it. I think the Eagles can win this one. It's at home. The link is going to be going rowdy as usual. So I'm going to the Eagles here.
Yeah, it's just tough to trust the Jaguars, right? Like you said, they've made some games close that maybe they shouldn't have been a part of. But Christian Kirk goes down for the season. They trade away their not star, but a really good left tackle in Cam Harrison or Cam Robinson, excuse me, to the Vikings today. So they're a team that they know they're rebuilding. I think they have some good pieces in place between BTJ and Bigsby. And Ingram has looked, good since he's returned from injury. He had that, insane catch to tie the game up in like triple coverage. So those guys are balling. And Trevor Lawrence has looked, despite their record, he has looked very, very good. If you look at a lot of the advanced metrics, he's at the top end for a lot of these things like EPA and stuff like that. So, he's playing really well. But they don't have all the pieces there to be a good football team. I also just don't think that they're being coached very well right now. On the flip side, Philly's hot. Philly's got a lot of weapons on both sides of the ball. Their defense is starting to play a little bit better too. So I just think, they're going to be able to score a lot on this Jaguars team. I don't imagine it being a close game because, like you said, the link's going to be rocking, and A.J. Brown's probably going to make a lot of big plays. So I'm going to go with Philly.
Yeah, I just don't see the Jaguars being able to keep up with them in this one. Next, you got the Lions taking on the Packers in the game of the week for Week 9. The Lions are absolutely just rolling everyone that they play, and it does genuinely remind me of the Saints from I want to say it was 2018 when we were just rolling everyone. I get the years mixed up because all 3 years, do well, then pain and suffering in the end, whatever. Anyways, we were rolling teams left and right, and it just reminds me of that because it's like the same kind of chemistry on the team. You got David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, Knuckles, and Sonic is what they want to be called now, which is just hilarious. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tim Patrick has stepped up the last few weeks. He's made some plays, and they're even like making just trick plays every single week that are like drawn out of a hat every single week. They're like, yeah, I guess we called this one, maybe this one next week. Ben Johnson's just dialing up random plays that are working every single week. And the Packers, yes, they've won the last 2 games, but it came down to a field goal and both times. And yes, the Texans are a solid team, but Mixon had a solid game. Then the Jaguars come in and they lost Christian Kirk throughout the game. And then you still only have Malik Willis. I'm not going to put that past him, but he has been efficient for the Packers. I just don't see them being able to keep up with the Lions in this one. And who knows, maybe this is like, since this is the first game between the two, maybe they lose this one and then they go into the Lions home and steal one over there. But I'm going to pick the Lions beating the Packers in Lambeau Field this week.
Yeah, with Jordan Love probably out or at least banged up with that groin injury, it's tough to trust Green Bay, especially if Malik Willis is in. Like you said, he's been efficient. I just don't think that they have, the ability to keep up with the Lions, right? I think that their defense is pretty good, but the Lions have just been able to roll everyone like we talked about earlier, and just have looked dominant in every facet of the game. Even losing Hutchinson, right? They still look pretty good on defense. Even losing JMO, they still look pretty good on offense with guys stepping up. Special teams, they're making big plays. The punt return touchdown, a huge kick return, right? Like they're just, when you have all 3 facets of the game going for you, that's when you know that you're a Super Bowl caliber team, right? When, you can have a great offense, you can have a great defense, but when you play on the special teams like they do, when they have a kicker like Jake Bates, who's not, he's lights out. When they got a punter like Fox, who's, pinning, guys deep and really making everything better for that defense, like they have every facet of the game going for them right now. They're coached really well. It's just hard to pick against them. I think the one game they lost was pretty much a fluke, and this team is just probably going to roll. I'm willing to say, at least the NFC Championship, but I think they're a Super Bowl team, at least Super Bowl caliber. So I'm going to go the Lions.
They're definitely the top team in the NFC. For probably the rest of the season, we'll see if any team steps up to them. But I think they're just, like you said, should be able to beat anyone in their path in the NFC. Next, we got the Rams taking on the Seahawks. And this is a very interesting game for this division because, the Rams, they come back from injuries last week. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua both coming back. And their offense seems to be right back. Like it didn't skip a beat. Puka Nacua everyone was like, oh, don't start him in fantasy. He's still holding on to that injury. It's not he's not fully healthy. And then he comes out and just, oh, there's Puka. He's completely fine. And he just balls out. And they're throwing to guys that weren't even Puka Nacua. I'm blanking on his name. It was Robinson. I don't remember. Yeah. And man, 2 touchdowns. The guys that you didn't need to score fantasy-wise, but Matt Stafford is hitting everyone that's open. He's making good throws, making good plays. He had one where it was like, that was a miss last week. Like he had the one miss over the top. But I don't think that's going to hinder him in this one. And the Seahawks just got rolled over by the Bills. And I think the Rams can pretty much do a similar play style offense where Kyren Williams is going to get the ball a good amount, and then you can still hit Puka and Cooper Kupp and all of your other weapons that, yes, they're not name brands, but Matt Stafford's still going to find them. So I think the Rams can beat the Seahawks here. The Seahawks on the other side, man, I mean, they're a solid team. I don't think they're bad, but their offense has taken a step back the last few weeks. Obviously, DK Metcalf injured for last week, and they're optimistic he's going to play this week, but it's questionable. We're not sure yet. If DK Metcalf's in this game, maybe they make it a little bit more of a contest. But with him out, if he's out, I don't see him making it close. I think the Rams will be able to win either way. I'll make the pick. I'm solidifying it. I'm picking the Rams here in this one.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle's a good team, right? It's just it's tough because the NFC is a lot stronger this year than it has been in years past. So they're probably just not a team that's, playoff caliber with the way that the NFC is standing right now. The only reason every week that we've talked about the Rams, right, we've talked about they're banged up. We never highlighted, this is a bad football team. This is that, it's always been because they were banged up. And now they're healthy, right? And they showed that last week. They absolutely rolled. Cooper Kupp didn't get that involved, but that's because they had guys like Puka Nacua balling out and Demarcus Robinson, like you said. I mean, that was my big thing, right? When you have a guy like that, making big plays for them, it's tough to stop a team like that. And Kyron's really running the ball really well. He's dominating the pass game as well. So defensively, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse are making big plays. So, I have a lot of confidence in this team, so I'm going to go with the Rams as well.
Yeah, Jared Verse is just killing dudes as a defensive rookie lineman. It's really impressive because he wasn't even taken like. Obviously, going into the draft, we were talking Jared Verse is the best power rushing defensive lineman in the draft. Ham and I were talking about that. We were doing our draft breakdowns, but he didn't have like all of the pass moves that you wanted, and it still doesn't seem to matter. He's bull rushing NFL veterans every single week. So if he can continue to do that, he could get to the defensive rookie of the year spot. I don't know if he's at there right now, but he could if he keeps it up. Next, we got the Colts taking on the Vikings in a game where, I mean, the Colts benched Anthony Richardson. Joe Flacco is back, and Josh Downs, man. I mean, Josh Downs, impressive with Joe Flacco. Anthony Richardson, first few outings with Anthony Richardson, Josh Downs just doesn't show up because he's not targeting him. Then last week we see him throwing the ball to Josh Downs, and he's back. Josh Downs kills it. Almost had 2 touchdowns, barely out of bounds on the second one. Just balled out. Absolutely balled out. We want to see Josh Downs do that again now with Joe Flacco coming back in. But the Vikings, if you lose 3 straight after starting out undefeated, like being on the top of the division, you can't afford to lose this game. They absolutely cannot afford to lose this one against the Joe Flacco-led Colts. But that being said, I'm kind of tempted to take the Colts here with Joe Flacco coming in. But I think Flores is going to take a step back. He's going to reevaluate what they did last week because they weren't blitzing a lot. They weren't doing the things they've been doing all season, and it kind of killed them against the Rams. I think they're going to go back to what they've done the first 5 weeks and beat the Colts. I'm going to pick the Vikings here. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just have a lot of confidence in the Vikings defense, right? They've shown us a lot this year. Just Brian Flores has dialed things up. I know that they haven't been as hot as of late. They've kind of fallen off a bit as a team. Even Darnold has struggled a little bit more. But the Colts team is confusing to me because like every time, even when Flacco came in, I thought they were going to start to dominate and play really well. But they didn't play as well as I thought they would in some of those games. I think he definitely is a better, option for them than Anthony Richardson. But I still just think, they're a confusing team. They're not, they're not too much better with Flacco. And I just think that the Vikings defense will be able to cause some problems for them.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam Darnold will be able to play efficient enough. I mean, they have Justin Jefferson, right? Like that is at the end of the day, when you have a guy like that, an offense is going to be a problem for you. I think they're going to get Hopkinson back this week too, which will be huge because that's just another layer of their offense. So I'm going to go with Minnesota just because I think overall they're the better team, and I think they're going to start to kind of get back on track here. And I think the addition of Hawkinson is huge.
Yeah, and like you said, like Joe Flacco coming back, it does improve the way that they use their weapons. Like Joe Flacco spreads the ball around a little bit more, but it's still like it's not a huge leap for the team skill wise. He's not carrying you to the playoffs and things like that. So I'm going to go with the Vikings as well. Next, we got the Buccaneers taking on the Chiefs. The Buccaneers still banged up, obviously, without their 2 top receivers. And they came out last week and they still looked solid. Like the offense, Baker Mayfield was able to drive the team down the field. Cade Otton was used a good amount, and he looked solid. And then obviously Rachaad White, Sean Tucker, the whole entire backfield that they have a good running back committee, and they can use that this week. The Chiefs, like you said, didn't look great against the Raiders, and obviously they could be because it's an AFC West showdown. They're always a little bit closer when you're in division. But the Chiefs, their offense, DeAndre Hopkins coming in a little bit, just another week under his belt with the Chiefs offensive playbook. And Travis Kelce finally scored and had a decent game last week, had a good fantasy week, National Tight Ends Day. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But I think the Chiefs here at home will be able to beat the Bucs. They're banged up. I don't see the offense being able to do too much against Spags defense here. And this one, I think the Chiefs win.
Yeah, the Chiefs they're such a confusing team to me, and I forget who was talking about this recently, but they are like the fakest undefeated team I think I've ever seen. Right, like they just have not when you look back at a lot of teams that have been undefeated at this point in time, they have had dominant wins. The Chiefs have not. I don't think they've had a single dominant win so far this season, right? Like they've played close games against teams that they have no business being in close games with. Case in point last week, right? 7-point win over the Vegas Raiders. I know that Tampa's banged up, but despite them being banged up at the receiver position, we've seen some promise from McMillan and Cade Otton and the running game. And Baker, if he can play turnover-free football, man, I mean that is huge, right? Every time he's throwing multiple picks, he's made games closer than they should be. I know that the Chiefs' defense is tough, but I think they're dealing with some injuries right now with Jalen Watson, some other guys. So that does, the secondary is a little banged up. I just struggle to trust the Chiefs. This isn't even like I hate them because of the AFC West. It's just like they haven't dominated teams. They have not dominated a single game. At some point in time, they got to lose. And I trust Tampa to be that team, right? I think Baker has the ability to spread the ball around to guys that might not be big name guys, but guys who can make some plays. I think defensively they're not too bad. So I have a lot of trust in Tampa, so I'm going to go with Tampa here.
Wow, I like it. I like you picking the Bucs simply because it gives me another game to hopefully come back by. But I don't mind the take either because the Chiefs, like you said, like they haven't looked like themselves all year, and it's kind of like the Vikings when the Vikings had that one really good season where they were just beating teams by one score left and right, and then they got to the playoffs and a team finally got a good lead on them, and they couldn't come back. But I think the Chiefs should be able to win. I just think their defense at home, their home field advantage is really good in Kansas City. Obviously, Spags' defense is going to blitz the hell out of Baker without his weapons. So we could see it'll be a good Monday Night Football. At least I think it'll be competitive. At least hopefully it's not a blowout like last week or an ugly game like a couple of these Monday Night Footballs have been. Anyways, that'll do it for this episode. I think closing notes, I'll have to say, last week, Ty and I talked about the Saints fans bringing back the brown bags. I possibly showed up in a brown bag if we lost the Chargers. I thought about it, but we did have Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener in that game, and I was like, a lot of people weren't picking us to win that game. It wasn't really like we were expected to just go in and win, so it wasn't a too terrible of a loss. But if we go in to this game and lose the Derek Carr back to the Panthers, who are just absolutely reeling, it might have to make a debut with the brown bag next week. So we'll see. Ty, what are your closing thoughts?
This is a brown bag game. That's my closing thought. I was thinking about it earlier today, and I was like, yeah, I can't believe I really said, last week was a brown bag game, because the Chargers aren't a bad team, but this is a brown bag game. If the Carolina Panthers beat the New Orleans Saints, I expect you to show up next week wearing a brown bag, and if Denver beats the Ravens, I mean, I really expect it because here you are showing no support to me after I support your team last week against the Chargers. So I kind of hope that brown bag comes in. I should have picked the Panthers, honestly.
Yeah, I'll give you props if Denver wins and the Saints lose. Trust me, I will. Anyways, that'll do it for this episode of the Jenks Island Podcast. Right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.